Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time you're listening or watching this video live stream, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Down in the Valley. My name is Edson Ochoa, one of the co hosts of this podcast. We got a good episode today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the reactions to last night's South Texas Derby loss, where RGV FC, with a rotated squad, lost 2-1 at Toyota Field to San Antonio FC. Unfortunately, our good friend and co-host Jacob was unable to make it to today's episode, but we are bringing in a very special guest tonight to talk about their reactions to last night's game. And I'm talking about a good friend of the podcast and, of course, a closet RGVFC fan, as I always tell him jokingly. But no, we've got Harry Austin from the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable with us tonight to talk about this last night's game. Harry, how's it going, man?
It's going well. That's what, eight, if I'm counting right. We're above LeBron now. Not one, not two, not three, not four, but eight in a row without losing to our friendly rivals from down south, RGV.
Keep that in your thoughts because we will be going back. We will be going back to that. But Harry, for those of the people that are watching, that are listening, that are right now in the chat. By the way, guys, don't forget. Be sure to participate down there in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube, on Twitch, or on Facebook. It will appear here. If you guys have any questions, if you guys have any comments, any hot takes that you guys want us to talk about on the show, you go ahead and put it there. If you guys want to ask questions of to Harry about San Antonio's point of view about the Derby or anything like that, even Copa Texas related, send them over to him, and we'll make sure that he answers the questions. We've got right now, real quick, we've got a chat from Ibrahim Moreno. He says, "What's up, Edson? Welcome, Harry. Nice to put a face to the name."
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
well, it's like on Twitter. I remember on Twitter for a while, you just had SAFC's
Yes.
logo, right? So when I met you the first time, I was like, I was not expecting, because I had no idea, how you looked like. So, but it was, yeah. But he's what, since 20, since Down in the Valley pretty much started, right? You've been
Mhm.
you've been following us. You've been
I've
friends.
trolled you, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the first. I remember the first couple of. I guess, yeah, the first two seasons. It was, you would troll us.
And we would lose.
Who else? I remember there was this. I think it was Rafa. I think Rafa was also like the biggest, RGVFC hater, and now we've been. I've been on your show with him, and all of
Mhm.
that. Just been talking banter. So we've been pretty friendly, but obviously, when all of that goes away when there's a South Texas Derby coming up. But yeah, for those that haven't met you or haven't interacted with you on social media or even in the chat, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, obviously, I'm a San Antonio FC fan. Was a season ticket member, one from way back with the Scorpions in the
Mhm.
NASL, and then the whole sold, bought, that type of situation. And to me, it's just excited. Growing up, we didn't, I'm, what, 50 now? We didn't have soccer in Western Colorado, so mainly grew up a football fan.
Mhm.
Uh, but no, it came down to San Antonio, and the Scorpions were starting, and I always thought it'd be kind of cool to be season ticket member from day one, and so I have been, and then I fell in love with it, and been doing a podcast for what, 5 years, 6 years now
Yeah.
for that here. So, but we do high school, which is going to start picking up in a couple of months. We used to do lower leagues, but the UPSL kind of went away, but it's coming back here in San Antonio, and I'm interested to kind of see if anything is going to be happening in the Valley as well. But no, it just like I said here, just a huge fan of USL, huge fan of supporting all the local teams for that here. Obviously I'm not a fan of RGV, but I do think I try to support RGV as best as I can. I try to attend matches. Unfortunately, this year I think it's going to be the first year that I won't be able to go
Hmm.
because it's on a Wednesday during the school year. So it's we made our away trip to New Mexico this past 2 weeks ago for that here. So that was the last away trip that we are going to go to this year. So barring a unforeseen day off from work, which hopefully doesn't happen. And yes, I'm a closet. Let's see here, RGV fan, Rising Austin FC fan. Austin Bold back in the day. I've got a big closet.
Well, I mean, judging by all the scarves that are in your background, yeah, I think you could say that everybody considers you a closet fan of the whole USL and everything. I wouldn't be surprised. But no, but you've always been a very very avid, I mean, not just for your team. And one of the things I respect about you and and people that cover their teams that are like you is that not only do you focus on covering your team, but you're also very knowledgeable on the league in general, and even within other leagues within lower division. So the fact that you're able to have all this knowledge, it's always a good thing for your audience to know more and have a little bit more of an understanding on how lower division soccer works, because it's difficult enough at an MLS level, like understand how everything works, and it's even worse. And at the USL level, the league doesn't really, I mean, doesn't really force or I'm trying to, what's the word I'm trying to find
It's
here?
not
Promote.
transparent.
They don't promote transparency within, not only within their own league, but even like within their clubs. So if the league isn't promoting transparency within itself, how are they going to force these teams to promote their own transparency? So it's a lot more difficult for fans to be able to understand. Let's say, for example, when transfers happen, obviously
Speaking of transparency, there's a reason why I'm wearing this tonight. So
all right, well, here, tell us.
So for those that don't know, and I don't even know if it's allegedly, one of our trainers basically told the Banditos and Union 602, the Phoenix Rising supporters group, that he was going to call ICE on him, which to me is unacceptable. It's racist, in my opinion. And like I said, my wife is Hispanic. My kids are half Hispanic now. And to me, it's uncalled for. Unfortunately, Alan Marcina, our coach, came out and said, it's been handled, blah, 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 blah. But the league hasn't said anything. The club hasn't said anything. So
it's kind of been pushed under the rug.
It's that whole transparency
Yeah.
for that here. And I couldn't make it to the game. But if I was going to go to the game, I would have worn my Bandito jersey as support, with my friends in the Rising supporters group, who immediately after the game told me what happened, told me who did it. They didn't know the name, but they're like, hey, this is what he looks like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to public out him because, that's not who I am. But to me, like I said here, I find it's one of those, as a fan, I still support my club. I think 99.99% they're great people. This schmuck shouldn't be on the team, should have been fired, and unfortunately is not. And I don't know all the situations, because there was banter going forth. Even the Rising supporter group said, hey, we were giving them lip. But to me, I can't comprehend saying, hey, using that line, that you're going to call ICE on anybody. It just doesn't even cross my mind. And to me, it's unacceptable. So speaking of transparency, unfortunately, that's a prime example of it. The other prime example, and you talk about MLS rules, San Antonio, and this is a good thing as a San Antonio FC fan, the 25-day contract, they were the first ones to really use that to their advantage. And then also with the Christian Pirano, he had an opt-out clause, but what a lot of people didn't know, and we didn't know this, is that San Antonio still held his USL rights. So when he wanted to sign with Sacramento, Sacramento gave cash considerations or something is what we've been told to San Antonio. So transparency, both positive and negative. So,
and I don't know why they worded like that, cash considerations. It's like, do you get cash or you do not get cash? Like, come on. Like, am I gonna get richer for doing this, or is this just a dog and pony show just to make it seem like somebody's benefiting out of this? Like really, just
why can't they just tell the details? They gave us $100,000, $50,000, $10,000, whatever it was. I don't understand the logic of not disclosing, the details of a transfer. But
yeah, I don't know. It's I know this is a battle that's been in place in lower league soccer for so many years, and there doesn't seem to be an end to it. But I mean, we can only do so much. We can only talk. We can only mention it on our shows. But at the end of the day, the ones who should make the change, they don't care. I mean, it's all about the status quo. You got to remember that. Real quick, I just want to say hi to everybody in the chat. We've got, like I said, we've got Abraham, we've got Ray, who says hi to both of us. Mike Reyes says, "What's up?" It tells you, but we'll talk about it later on. It says, "Harry, 4 of our main players did not play, and we kept up with y'all. I think next game should be a war." But we'll talk once we talk a little bit about the actual match. But before we get into it, and now that we've gotten into the territory of hot takes and opinions about what the league has been doing and the lack of common sense, I want to get your thoughts, Harry, about the fact that the USL decided that both South Texas Derby games were going to be on Wednesdays.
Is this a PG show, or can I give the full version?
Give the full version, man. Like there's a reason why why Spotify for podcasters allows me to use the explicit flag.
It's bullshit. It's just that I don't, especially an ESPN2 match. Mm-hmm. And what makes it worse is there's 2 matches on Saturday on ESPN2. How cool it would have been to have whether it's in San Antonio or HEB Park, if it's a Saturday match, you're going to get a better turnout. San Antonio had a poor turnout last night. For San Antonio, it probably couldn't happen at a worse time. Wednesday nights are hard for you guys to come up because it's a 4-hour drive. And it's not so much the 4-hour drive coming back. It's after the match and driving back down to the valley, 10, 11. You get home, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, we did that before, man, and it was terrible.
And especially if you got to work the next day. So you could probably squeeze an afternoon out. Getting up here, you could probably leave early. That's probably okay, but it's getting back safely. And that's the big thing is getting back safely. So to me, that's going to prevents me from going down. But to me, it just, from the logistical aspect of it, it doesn't make sense. And it's not just us. Let's be fair. It is not just the Copa Tejas matches for it here. San Antonio, El Paso, and El Paso's historically on a Wednesday. But to me, from a league aspect, I don't understand why prime matches like this are on a midweek game, and especially at the start of school. This is when San Antonio started school, so not if it had been a week earlier, I think you would have had a better crowd because it wasn't a school night. But where it's the first week of school, 3 days in, I don't schedule anything during that week just because you don't know what's going on with the kids. If you got to go get stuff for classes and stuff like that, it doesn't make sense. But I'll give them credit, especially from the week before where I believe no games were on ESPN Plus because of through there, and they made the decision to switch the YouTube's on for everybody, so that was awesome. But and this is nothing against Mike Watts and Kerr, Devin Kerr, who did the broadcast. It just to me the atmosphere wasn't where it should have been. But
no,
what about your thoughts?
I said it when it was announced. It's terrible because you would think that a high stakes derby, especially how historically they've been tough, competitive, tight matches, you would think that if you're gonna go from a rankings perspective, you know, you're not gonna get good ratings. You're not gonna get good ratings when you have it in the midweek match, when you don't have a full stadium, when traveling supporters are not going to be able to travel because for the same reason, right? It's a weekday, people got to work, and all of that. It's like you would think that derbies would be taboo to put in midweek matches for that specific reason, because it's not going to you're limiting the amount of positive ratings, the amount of ticket sales, the amount of banter and interaction in social media by having those games in a midweek compared to a Saturday. Like maybe I can understand maybe a Sunday. Like okay, it's a little bit worse, but because the next thing you got to go to work compared to a Saturday. But I do think it's still better than a Wednesday. You
Yeah.
know, and it's just I think, like I mentioned to you before we went live, Harry, I think Chris Hockman said it best. You know, the league's social media is trying to make it seem like they're really hyping up this derby, but the actions prove otherwise of putting them in midweek matches. Uh, so I don't know. It frustrated me from the beginning that it was announced. It still frustrates me to no end because a lot of us here in the valley we really wanted to go travel to San Antonio and go watch the game over there, because it's a derby, right? And I don't want to get started about the limitations that Toyota Field gives to traveling supporters, especially RGV. You know, and Abraham, is a witness of what the limitations that they gave them yesterday. So if he wants to talk about it on the chat, we'll mention it. But you know, I mean, it's better than nothing because even San Antonio fans in this game were affected, like you mentioned. The atmosphere wasn't as electric as it usually is for a derby. And I've been into South Texas derbies in person before, and it gets loud, it gets rowdy, it gets like the people get into it, but you had a lot of empty seats. Why? Because a lot of people couldn't go because the next day you have to go wake up early and take your kid to school. You yourself have to go to the office early in the morning. So it's like it really really watered down and neutered, and I use that phrase in that video that I uploaded a couple months ago when they announced it. I said it looks like the USL is trying to neuter the rivalry between San Antonio and RGV.
One of my fondest memories didn't happen on the Fitch. It happened probably 2 years ago through there. You guys brought up the bus. The Stampede brought up a bus and happened to just park right next to me. And it was one. I think it was a draw. I don't remember if we lost or a draw, and I had to walk out. And the Stampede. I think it was Michael and a couple others were out there just waiting.
Mhm.
So, but it was fun. It wasn't, like I said here, it's just that's the thing that I miss. And like last year, I think we took a bus down, if memory serves correct, and
Yeah, I think
met
it
up with the
did.
Stampede. Um, you know, you know, participated in a tailgate with you guys. And to me, what makes me most sad, and we're going to talk about this, the result that happened yesterday sets up perfectly for Copa Tejas. Because if RGV wins, they win the cup because it's tied on goal difference. San
Mhm.
Antonio, they just have to draw, which for that here. But if RGV wins, they win the cup, and I believe it'd be the first silverware that you guys have won. I believe I could be incorrect on that, but I know it'd be your first Copa Teos. It would be in front of the Stampede, but you know Wednesday nights, and I've spoke with several members of the Stampede. Wednesday nights are hard, for families, especially during the school year, along those lines, to where whoever wins, down in the valley, it's the crowd is probably going to be half of what it would normally be,
Mhm.
And I'm probably being a little bit kind on that.
Yeah.
Especially, and I'm mainly just talking about the supporters. You figure about half the supporters are able to go on a Friday night because some supporters work evenings and stuff like that. To me, that's the bad thing about this for it here is next match the trophy is going to be handed out no matter the result. There will be a winner of Copa Teos. And to me, and we're going to get into the game here after the pregame talks here. I think it sets up perfect for RGV. To go out and break the streak and then also collect some silverware. That would be typically how this rivalry goes. I hate
Yeah.
to say it.
Yeah. So real quick before we start on the game, Abraham asked, "Do you guys know why the game was aired on ESPN2?"
It's a contract that USL has, and it's a big deal to be on cable TV where it's not behind a paywall, where you can go to any bar and typically watch the game for that here. So it's a huge deal. Uh, Probably what last 2-3 years historically around this time of year before football season starts.
Mhm.
You'll see USL on there. I thought it might have been more this year, just because normally MLS has MLS, but this year they don't have that. So um, I would have liked to seen a little bit more on ESPN2. But the negative to that is I know a lot of our fans have cut the cord, have ESPN Plus, and when it's on ESPN2,
That
you have to go to the bar or find somebody with
that
with a
was
cable
me.
subscription.
Mhm.
So that's the negative. But I think from a league aspect, from getting eyes, because let's be honest, people will have ESPN2 on in the background, where they're not going to just go in and look at, pull up ESPN Plus and search for USL through there. Because let's be honest, USL does not pop up as a favorite
It's a
unless
niche.
you have
It's a
it.
niche market. Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. And honestly, like I think it makes sense that derbies are gonna be, or at least like bigger rivalries are gonna be higher priority to be on ESPN2, because of everything that that entails. They usually tend to be more entertaining matches, or at least you'll get the occasional fight or scuffle or anything like that. So all of that, whether you like it or not, that is going to attract views to the league and to these teams. I mean, let's not forget we had a couple of years ago we had a white cat storm the field. We had in that same game a bicycle kick by Juan Carlos Azocar to equalize the game. So so there are a lot of good storylines in the South Texas Derby that if caught in a good time on an ESPN2 broadcast, it might attract some ice into the USL. Or at least that's a theory behind it. So
well, I know for a fact it did because I had a guy that I work with reach out to me, and said, "Hey, he's an Austin FC fan. He's like, hey, I saw the match," and then him and his wife are going to go down to the valley and he did some research on RGV and he's going to try to see if he can go to an RGV match down there. So to
mhm.
me, it pays off. Like I said here, just getting the eyes on there. Um, it's something that I wish they would do more for that. Yes, Michael, that would be the match for that here.
He says, I remember taking the bus to San Antonio, man. That match was crazy. We were down a man and came back from being down 2-0. Oh,
Yeah.
that was hectic. Yeah. But let's talk about this because I know a lot of you people are probably like, you guys are babbling on. Yeah, all right, come on. So let's talk about last night's match. So coming into this match, at least from the RGV perspective, we came off a hard fought draw against Louisville City at Lynn Family Stadium, and so obviously from what a lot of people were talking about was that RGV like really fought, like they really played hard in that match. They really let everything out on the field, and they were able to salvage a draw on the road, which the fact that they got that against a traditionally tough team like Louisville City, after a disappointing loss on the road against Las Vegas Lights of all teams.
Las Vegas is better than their record, though. I still contend.
Why does
still contend
everybody
that.
say that? Like,
Because
why
if
does
you watch the matches, their performance that they put in doesn't equal. It's kind of like what we're going to talk about with this match here. The result went San Antonio's favor here, but you could argue split points would have probably been the fair decision for this match. I think most everybody here now is a San Antonio fan. I'm happy we got all three. Don't get me wrong, but I think a fair result, and at least for me, I expected RGV to tie it up because that's typically what happens, as Michael reminded me previously. But Vegas is kind of that same thing where they do so much well, but they just can't get the ball on frame. And that's a huge problem for RGV, which I'm sure you'll probably discuss throughout this episode. But that's the problem with Vegas here is they do a lot of great things, but if you can't score, that's the issue.
I remember a quote by Jerson Echeverry a couple years ago: without goals, there's no glory. You know, but yeah, so RGV comes into this game with such a short turnaround, having to travel again back to the Valley and then travel by bus over to San Antonio. And one of the biggest surprises was, at least for RGV fans, and right now we'll get Harry's point of view from the San Antonio perspective on his team and the starting 11 for both teams. But RGV from this match against Louisville City made 8 changes to the starting 11. Obviously, you had Tyler Derrick on goal, but then you had players like Cole Frame making his debut with the Toros. Nodarse getting back to the starting 11, Eric Kinsner making it back to the starting 11, Gabriel Benitez as a center back, and Tomas Ritondale coming back to the starting 11. So just in the defensive line alone, you've got 3 players that are completely new to playing as starters, which means that you are playing with an I don't want to say improvised, but I guess you can best describe it like that, an improvised defensive line that have yet to have played a an official match, together, right? So that's just a defense, right? And then in the midfield, you've got Robert Coronado, Gringo Torres back in the starting 11, and then Ian Cerro as an attacking midfielder. And up on top, you've got Juan Galindres and Cristiano Francois to make up your starting 11. So that honestly surprised me, because obviously as a fan you always want to give your best team against your rival, San Antonio FC. So seeing all these young players, I was like, oh man, like I don't think it's gonna be a very, very pretty match for RGV. So I don't know what your thoughts about that when you saw that starting 11 from RGV, and then you compared it to San Antonio's starting 11. What were your thoughts on that?
So our starting 11, we had 2 changes for that. Maloney, our captain, one of our captains, fullback, went out injured against New Mexico for that here, but he was subbed by Shannon Gomez. So there's a drop, but not a big drop. And then
Exactly.
Manley started for Tulu, who came over from Hartford. Manley playing against RGV. He's been in and out with some injuries here. I think it was more precaution, but typically Manley's the starter. So we had Jome, Tainer, Garcia, Manley, we had Tainer, Garcia, Manley as the back 3, Jome and Gomez as the fullbacks that attack. Hayes was kind of the DM. Rita and Hernandez, Jorge Hernandez, as kind of the attacking mids, and then up top we had Tani and Santiago Patino, who just signed in. Of course, we had Jordan Farr in between the goals here. So our lineup was set. Like you guys, we did travel. We played Saturday in New Mexico in Elevation. Came home. We didn't have to travel for this one here. And I'm not sure traveling from RGV to San Antonio's tough, but I guess on a bus for 4 or 5 hours. But they came up the day before, is my understanding, because we had got reports that RGV was in town the day before. So
Mhm.
travel for this match, for either team, typically isn't a normal travel. It's not like going to Austin. Don't get me wrong, where you go up and down in the same day. But uh, to me, I think both teams were playing short. I was a little bit surprised by the 8 changes. I think just like with everybody else. Um, I'll be interested kind of in your thoughts on it. To to me, it to me, I wonder if Wilmer went in saying, "Hey, if I can get an early goal," which they did, and then kind of hold it, and then bring on the starters in the second half, or at some point in the second half, where you're going to have fresh legs, to where you could get that best opportunity to go against uh, the waves of SAFC. But to me, these two teams play like both teams play a pressing style. Both teams play physical. Both teams play on that edge, you could kind of say, and uh, that's why typically there's a lot more cards. So I was kind of surprised there were only 2 cards in this game, and
Yes.
both of those cards were after the 80th minute. And what I found interesting when I was doing the Copa Teos Shield, RGV's gone 2 games without a yellow card. They had the red card last week, late, but it was one of those things that kind of stuck out to me, that as far as a uh, normal SAFC Rising match, yeah, we were called for 14 fouls, 2 yellows. You guys were called for 6 fouls, no yellows. I think there's only one that really San Antonio fans really have a
Yeah.
complaint about. But I thought it was, you know, I'll say this: I thought it was well officiated, although there were times where each team could probably feel a little bit slighted, saying, "Hey, you could have got here." But I think overall, the official did a good job controlling things. It wasn't where players really got out of hand for that here. He didn't buy the Patino dives for that here, that the back-to-back dives. Pulling a jersey I do think pulling a jersey is a PK, but then he fell down, and then the second one through there. And I did take offense to Fabian Garcia's yellow card because Wilmer Jr. jumped into him and then fell down. But outside of that, just I thought the ref controlled the game, and like I said here, both teams. And I wonder if it goes back kind of to your view. It wasn't a hot crowd. It didn't seem like it had that same intensity as a lot of our matches have. I don't know if it was due to the heat, because it was 100 plus degrees at kickoff still here in San
Yeah.
Antonio. So, but to me, the starting lineup, obviously you guys had more changes, but if I'm Wilmer, and I know you're going to show the highlights, I think the game started how you wanted. It just you guys quickly gave it right back up.
So if I'm not mistaken, by the way, Ray says Wilmer coached way too cute and it backfired nicely. I like to see a little bit more of an explanation about that, Ray. Abraham says we have no injuries. Everyone's in good health, as no injuries have ever been reported. And then Ray says it was an MLS ref too.
Yeah, it was the ref. I thought did a great job. Now you could kind of, there's every game's going to have a couple of calls, but I think if you look at the overall of the game, you didn't have the normal people up in the face, and
Yeah.
he called a fair game. Can we squibble over a call here or there? Sure, but and I know the ESPN2 crowd, as Jonathan Check, likes to mention that, they got the San Antonio crowd of, ref you suck chant going for that here, which is unfortunately a common thing in San Antonio for some odd
Mhm.
reason. But your thoughts on the referee? I thought he did a good job.
I thought he did decent, to be honest. I thought like a lot of the times the referees, when you've got a, like a such a high stakes match, they want to be the center of attention. They want to get in the players' faces and stuff like that. But I think he handled himself well for the most part. Um, the fact that he was able to control this game to just having to take two yellow cards, it could go both ways, or the fact that he was too lenient. But I do feel like it was okay because sometimes when referees are too lenient in that aspect, players take advantage of it and start making all these unnecessary and terrible fouls, and then it gets out of control. But even with that, even with the minimum amount of yellow cards shown in this game, he was able to maintain some sort of control
Mm.
over the players, and they were able to to play. Now the only one I do feel like maybe he should have gotten a yellow was number 16 when he pushed Frank Nodarse to the ad board. I guess the spirit of Mitchell Tainter,
Tawny.
I guess the spirit of Mitchell Tainter got into him as well, because that's the second game where a San Antonio player pushes a Toros player into the ad boards. When clearly there was no need for it to do that. But other than that, I think it was a pretty fair call by the referee overall in this game. Now Abraham says, I agree with Harry. The crowd was pretty stagnant. The heat didn't help. And then Ray says, how do you make 8 changes in a near playoff atmosphere? One team is in the other looking to be in that club. Well,
So
so let's,
to,
go ahead.
to me, that's a great question because for San Antonio, we know they're pushing to be the number 1 seed, not only in the West, but in the entire USL Championship again. So I think with San Antonio FC, you're not going to get a lot of roster turnover because San Antonio has the depth to be able to be able to do it. And to be fair, our match against New Mexico, which was a 3-0 win for San Antonio FC, wasn't as physical and mentally as your guys' 2-2 draw, in Louisville for that here. So I do think that probably plays a part. But to me, 8 changes is a lot. But to me, it's hard to argue with the result.
Yeah. So let me give a little bit of context, right? Okay. So yesterday I was at the watch party for the game, right? That was hosted by RGV, and it was Jonathan Ricketts, Eric Pimentel, and Wahab Akwe that were there uh, at the watch party. Obviously invited by the Toros, so it's not like they were there and they were not supposed to be there, kind of thing, So me saying them, I'm not going to get them in trouble, hopefully. But the point I'm trying to make is, I talked to one of the players that I'm not going to mention who, right? So, but um, he did mention that as much as he and the others wanted to go be at the game and play this South Texas Derby because of what it represented, uh it was a decision by Wilmer Cabrera based on the fact that, based on the GPS readings from the game against Louisville, a lot of the starters ran a lot, and that's why I decided to puts a lot of the typical starters on the bench, and some of them, stayed in the valley to get some rest. Right. I feel like maybe he felt that it was more important to have your starters against a direct rival, looking for that playoff spot, which is Phoenix Rising in this case, than trying to prove a point against the first team in the Western Conference, which is San Antonio FC, despite it being, a rivalry and everything. As a fan, I really don't agree with it. Like I mentioned many times to the guys at the watch party, and here, to Harry before we started. But I think it makes sense once you analyze it in the long term. But like I said, as a fan, I was like, you always want to give your best team against your bitter rival, So honestly, and I saying one of the things I mentioned to you, Harry, as well before we started was one of the things that kind of irked me about all these changes to the defensive line is you don't have a leader now
Right.
because Wahab got the red, right? So that's out of Wilmer's control. But you don't have Eric Pimentel not even on the bench. So like if things get hairy, you bring in Eric Pimentel to kind of put order on that defensive line. You don't even have him because he's here in the Rio Grande Valley, right? So it's like you've got a defensive line where you're relying on just the leadership from Tyler Derrick, but and then you add to that a defensive line that doesn't have a lot of chemistry playing together, especially in an official match. So there really was a lot of stuff that went against RGV, and honestly, kind of getting ahead of myself, but I do feel like I do feel like I was surprised that even with all of that, they were still able to only limit San Antonio to 2 goals. And once we start looking at the replay at the highlights, a lot of these goals were pretty much very were lucky, to be honest. Uh, Ray, hold that thought. He says that's how Wilmer got cute, and also during the presser, Wilmer said numbers did not matter, and Toros never lost a game when scoring first until last night. Keep that in your head when we get to Kema no Kemaka. So but yeah. So anyway, so those were my thoughts regarding the starting 11 for RGV FC. So the game goes on, right? The game starts, and obviously it looked for a while that it was going to be a typical match where it looked like San Antonio was in control of the ball. It looked like or actually statistics wise, RGV had, I think, like more than 50% of the possession, but it really felt like San Antonio had more of the dangerous opportunities on goal. And then, like I said, you get into a situation where RGV gets an early goal in the 11th minute, which is right here. So they're distributing the ball well. Somehow they were able to get past the high pressure from San Antonio FC. And you can see some pressure there. Has to pass it back to Coronado. Cristiano Francois threw ball over to Ian Cerro, and he was able to get the shot on goal. That I guess Jordan Farr thought that ball was gonna go, way up of the crossbar, or he even hit the crossbar, because it really didn't seem like he made an intent to raise that hand and try to intercept that ball. But honestly, it was a really, really good
Well,
play
it
by
bounced off the
RGV.
crossbar. It bounced off. Yeah, it's excellent play by RGV. It went off the crossbar. To be fair, Rita got caught, ball watching, sleeping, whatever. But what's his name? Ian did a great, busted through. It was a great passing, and I was like, oh crap, here we go. That's the difference between San Antonio FC. This is the 4th or 5th game out of 6 that they've gave up the first goal.
Mm-hmm.
They're good enough offensively this year to be able to rebound from it, which is kind of a little bit change from, if you remember last year, they were very stingy defensively. This year, they'll leak a goal or two. My worry as a SAFC fan, come playoffs when defenses tighten, if they give up a goal early, sometimes the best offenses don't recover.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, as you'll get into, and I think you and I discussed this pregame, the game changed almost immediately with that goal, which you have to give credit to San Antonio FC. But for me, it was a perfect start for RGV. If you're a fan of RGV, getting that early goal. I know Ray mentioned that they hadn't lost ever, I think, but it was
In regular season. Mm-hmm.
in regular season. But it would have been something, 20-some, 30-some matches. I think where you had ended up drawing some, but you guys had not lost when scoring first. So
Yeah, exactly. So I think with the early goal, it really did seem like Wilmer Cabreras, like Harry mentioned right now. Harry mentioned a while ago that maybe the plan was to get an early goal, hunker down, and try to see how long it would take, to hold to a lead, and then bring in your typical starters to kind of close out the match. The problem is that, yes, you get the early lead, but then just a couple minutes later, you're back to square one and you're tied again. So that was something that was, I guess, was not in Wilmer's bingo card for this match. And this is off of a set piece, right? So I want y'all to take a look at this play, right? So number one, how is it that I guess it's Fabian Garcia that gets the first touch on that
Yes.
on that play? So Fabian
Yes.
Garcia is able to receive that ball by himself. Look, if I'm not mistaken, that's Gringo Torres that was guarding him.
That is number 7. Yes.
Right. So it's like, how is it that that Fabian Garcia is able to sneak past you like that? He takes you all the way to the goal line and then quickly, changes direction back towards the middle of the field, outside the 6-yard box, gets that touch. But the worst thing about it is, and I was telling Mike about it yesterday, and it's like RGV had a man advantage inside the box. And yet somehow San Antonio was still able to get 2 touches, and not with the header, not with headers, with the foot inside the box, despite having such a numeric advantage. That
But
was
you could
just
see
terrible
Patino's
defending.
But you could see Patino's position on there. He was in the perfect position where he's in front of the defender. Nobody between him and Derek. He's got wide open, and he is kept onside by I don't know which player that is.
I think that's Cerro. I think that's Cerro. That's keeping him on side. But the thing about it is, it's like, why is it that there's nobody in the first post that's staying in the first post, like, or at least have somebody like in between Patino and the goal. It's like, even Rob Coronado, you see right here, just standing, like he's in a position where he's out of the play, right? There's no way for him, even if he tries to move and react, there's no way that he's going to be intercepting that ball, and you're just giving free real estate to San Antonio, especially with Patino here, to just receive the ball and deflect it into the back of the net, right? Because obviously Tyler Derrick was more, focused on where the ball is, where Fabian Garcia is able to redirect it. And there's nobody in the defense, despite having, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you got 6 RGV defenders against 4 San Antonio attackers. You've got 2-man advantage, and somehow the San Antonio was still able to get a goal. It's just terrible defending, terrible marking. I don't know, were they playing man to man? Were they playing zone coverage? I don't know, because it really looked like neither of those defensive tactical decisions happened. It was just misorganization, miscommunication, and the worst part about it is like, okay, when you score early, you hold on, when you score early, you try to set a precedent of implementing your style, implementing the momentum in your favor, but you don't even take advantage of that, because 2 minutes later you could equalize, and on the contrary, you give more motivation, you give more of the momentum to San Antonio, because it's like, oh, even though we got scored on early, we recovered quickly, so it's like, what are they going to do? Kind of thing. And now as RGV, where it's like, man, it's like, we did the hard part and we couldn't do the easier part, which was, defending that lead, and much less, you get scored on within 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes from getting scored. So it was just terrible decision making in the defensive lineup, and it all goes back to the lack of experience in that defensive line. I feel like if you had Wahabakwe in there, if you had Eric Pimentel in there, I'm not saying maybe they weren't going to score any other way, but I feel like in this particular play, I feel like with their guidance and their leadership, they would have probably set themselves up better to be able to defend that set piece from San Antonio.
From a San Antonio fan, I thought it was great. It was the break that they needed to get back into the game. To me, if RGV goes, let's say 15, 20, 30 minutes before they give up the equalizer, I think that puts a lot more pressure on San Antonio. San Antonio is probably going to press a little bit more open to making mistakes, trying to press for that tying goal. But where they get the immediate equalizer, a minute and a half later,
Yes.
it's it was like, hey, we're back even. Both teams have confidence. I thought there was going to be more goals in this match than what ended up happening, but that's this matchup though. It is both teams know each other so well, and both coaches know each other so well that a lot of times the goals come down to I hate to say it, sometimes just mental breakdowns on each side. Rita not following Ian or letting him go by without any pressure, and basically he was 1-on-1 with Farr, and on this one here, you mentioned two against two against four back there, or three, through there, but
6 against
Patino was
4.
in the
Yeah,
six against four. But Patino was in the perfect spot. There was really nobody between him and Derek, and Patino, is a poacher type, and he's going to bury that, 10 out of 10 times, in my opinion.
which is why it's also like it also begs the question: if you know that Patino is a poacher style, and you know he's going to take advantage of the situation, you got to plan your defensive lineup, or at least your marking in set pieces. You got to plant it better in these kind of cases, because they're going to look for the tall player. They're going to look for the tall player to redirect that ball or try to get a shot on goal. So you got. Why are you marking? That's another thing. Just when I said that, I just like, why is one of the shortest players of this team, Gringo Torres, why is he marking Fabian Garcia, who is super tall? Like, I don't get it. We already had that happen last season in that equalizer by San Antonio, where he had the shortest player marking Mitchell Tainter, and which I heard was that that player did not listen to Wilmer Cabrera's instructions. He should have been in the wall. So, but that's what I heard. I'm not sure if that's true. But man, like when I heard that, like you remember that rant I went on that tirade. It's like why the hell? Like it just makes no sense. And in this case, también, it's like, why are you going to mark Fabian Garcia with one of the shortest players on the squad, right? Like it doesn't make any sense, right? And then after that, it's like they're going to go for Fabian to redirect it, so try to plan accordingly. Like if Fabian Garcia is going to be over there, and you've got your poacher here, Rob. You gotta get yourself into a position where you're going to be
forward.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously it's easy for me to say it from the comfort of this chair, kind of thing. But it's like that's just my analysis of this particular play. What could have improved in that play from the RGV perspective. Obviously, for San Antonio's perspective, it went flawlessly. I think you could not draw that tactic, the set piece tactic, better than how it went, right? So after that, it seemed like it was San Antonio's momentum. They continued to have some shots. Probably they were not on target. That's the thing. I think in the aspect that despite the lineup being improvised, if you want to call it like that, RGV was still able to limit the amount of opportunities on target for San Antonio. If you look at after the goal, really San Antonio didn't have a shot until the second goal, which happened 16 minutes later, right? So they were able to kind of react. They were able to contain. But this is the thing. We go back and we'll take a look right now at the play of that go-ahead goal for San Antonio FC. Right. So long ball trying to find Patino, right? Gets cleared out by Eric Kinsner. So right here, everything you see that RGV is kind of positioned. Yeah. They're kind of hunkering down. right? Trying to see what San Antonio bring to the table to try to open them up, right? Because at the end of the day, 1-1 at that point was still not a bad result considering the circumstances, right? So we go back to the fact that, okay, RGV is going to try to do some damage control and try to limit the damage that San Antonio can do on the team, right? So if you continue this play, this is where the ball gets passed to Rita. Rita isn't able to control it, but then this is where I have an issue. A missed tackle by Gabriel Benitez. Then a lack of aggressiveness from Robert Coronado in that play. And then at the end, that's just pure talent by Rita to able to slot it into the back of the net. But two things here. Once again, you see the lack of aggressiveness. Like, to me, it's one of the things, like right here. Okay. Tomas maybe could have hit that ball harder to make sure to try to clear it past Rita as he's coming in with speed, trying to catch up to it because he couldn't stop that ball correctly. Because it looked to me right here that Tommy's intentions were to try to pass the ball over to Ian Cerro, right? So the fact that he didn't hit it hard gave an advantage to Rita to be able to recover. Okay, so here that's good touch by Rita to get past Gabriel Benitez. But here, this is where I have a problem, Rob. Man, it's like you're outside the box, right? Go for the foul, like, or the ball passes, or the player passes, but not both, right? If you get, let's say, if you foul him outside the box, you end the play, and you give yourself an opportunity to defend, a free kick, right? And it's going to be a lot of in that position. They're going to try to go for a direct free kick, which really hasn't been very successful for San Antonio against RGV, right? But at least it gives you an opportunity to stop them. And yeah, you might get a yellow, but at least, but you stop the play. But instead, you raise up your hands and you move your body out of the way and just let Rita go in through. And if you notice right here, the way Kinsner is positioned himself, he's got most of his weight towards his right. Rita goes towards his left. And so this is where you see where Kinsner is caught out of balance, can't get a good tackle to block Rita's angle, and he puts it into the back of the net. So to me, that was the most frustrating part of this match, and the way that goal was scored. And I know you mentioned, Harry, before we went live, you had your own opinion about this play.
I thought, and I caught grief in our chat, that I said it was a lucky goal because the first two touches, and when you slow down the film, you got to even wonder if his first touch, he actually even made contact because it kept going. There was there was 2 or 3 opportunities for RGV to either to clear the ball. The slide, he slid too early. He didn't go hard enough. I know you mentioned, Coronado not fouling or not being aggressive enough. But to me, up before that, who was the player that missed it on the first one that when they came together?
Tomas Ritondale.
Number 20. To me, like you got it now. Rita is world class. When he got through there, and then once he got in the penalty area, he took care of it like because he's an MLS Loney player. He's 19. I think you could see Europe in his future if that's a goal of his. But to me, that first touch, the first 2 touches, I thought he was lucky, fortunate, to be able to still be able to maintain control. Because how many times do we see, like, if he did that 100 times, I bet you 5 times maybe he gets through there. Like he did. It's not a high percentage play that you're able to get those first 2 touches. Now, once he got in the box and got past Coronado and
Kinsner,
he's going to finish it. But to me, the fact from 5 yards, 6 yards outside the box, most likely for him to have the ball rolling that was open, that really wasn't under control by anybody. As a San Antonio fan, I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. We'll got it here. And I know our fan, people in our chat was saying no, that's what he intended to do, but you can't tell me that his first touch, that's what to me. I think if you asked a man to man, I think he would want to have a different touch other than, like you mentioned in the pregame, it looks like it slides under his foot
Yeah.
to keep going. But in these type of matches, you need luck for that here. And I think everybody, I think most of us would agree San Antonio probably was a little bit lucky on that one with the roll of the ball to be able to get the second goal. It was a class goal, don't get me wrong, but the lead up to the goal, San Antonio benefited from.
Chat's a little bit too quiet today. Come on, chat. I want to hear your thoughts about this, about our analysis, about the play,
they're depressed. They're depressed. 8 matches. Come on, we've took RGV's heart. There's it's just how it is.
So, that's my dad. See, my dad has to set the example here. So he says, my only comment is, whenever you go against San Antonio, you should have your best men on the pitch. As a fan, San Antonio is the only game you are not allowed to lose.
And I think that's the biggest issue with RGV fans for here. But I do think your point, if you look at the macro level, the big picture, and it's all going to depend on what happens this week against Phoenix.
Yes.
If you guys are able to get the win against Phoenix, then I think you can kind of justify it a little bit more. But if RGV does not get the win, and they need to get a win, not a draw, they need to get a win, then I think his decision to rotate the lineup as much as he did goes,
gonna backfire. Yeah. And so one of the things that and I mentioned it before we went live, Harry, to you. So the way I see it, or the way Wilmer sees it, and I kind of give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I don't agree 100% with it as a fan, but Wilmer's here trying to play chess when everybody's playing checkers, kind of thing, in order to get back into playoff contention. But the idea is despite the fact that it's a derby, right? When you're in a situation when you've got a game coming up on the weekday, with short turnarounds because of a weekday match and then a weekend before playing again, this weekend's team you're playing against is a direct rival in trying to find that playoff spot.
Yes,
so
100%.
What's the idea from Wilmer here? Which is, if we put our best players against Phoenix Rising and we beat Phoenix Rising, this is technically, you can call it a 6, even though there's 6 points are not on the line, but this is technically a 6-point match. Why? Because if you beat Phoenix Rising, you'll get 3 points, but you also assure that Phoenix Rising will get 0 points, which means that, because right now, Phoenix is 4 points ahead of you with 32 points. So if you beat Phoenix Rising, you get to 1 point, right? So, but what happens if, let's say, we put our best men on the field against San Antonio, and we put our rotated squad against Phoenix Rising? Let's assume that with our best men, we beat San Antonio at Toyota Field. Harry's probably like, nah, it's not going to happen. But let's assume it happens. Okay, you get to 1 point, right, to Phoenix Rising. But if you lose with your rotated squad to Phoenix Rising, you're back now to 4 points behind. So you're back where you started. And the only reason you end up, the only thing is you just put in your best man against San Antonio just for the bragging rights, you can say. At the end of the day, if you look at the pros versus cons, it makes more sense from a playoff battle perspective to make sure to get your best result against a direct opponent, so that way you're able to actually get closer to them, than having the risk of the fact that you might actually not gain any ground to Phoenix, because you used a weaker rotated lineup against them. And going back with San Antonio, it's like you can't even guarantee that even with our best man, we were going to get the 3 points, right?
Here's the key thing, and nobody really remembers this. What's the first tiebreaker?
Matches against each other.
Head to head. So this is why Wilmer's thinking about this. RGV, even if they go on a great run to end the season, isn't going to catch San Antonio to tie them to where that tiebreaker comes into place. But playing against Phoenix, if you guys are able to get the win on Saturday, all you need is a draw in Phoenix, and you guys hold the tiebreaker. So if you end up level in points, RGV would go to the playoffs, or would be in a position higher than Phoenix Rising. That's why this game is so important for RGV. Is yes, they want to get it so that way they are only 1 point behind, but more important, on the return match, which is what, 2 weeks away, because I think you play us, then Phoenix, and then San Diego, then play us, then Phoenix again.
Yes.
That return match in Phoenix, if you lose it, number one, you're behind, but it makes it even more difficult. But if you win this match, it sets RGV up to where a draw, if they win, they win, obviously. But even if you get a draw in Phoenix, which I think, goals 3 points at home, draw on the road, I think that sets RGV up fairly well. Now, playing Phoenix the way they're doing, that's a whole separate discussion here, and I'm sure we might talk about if we preview Phoenix and RGV towards the end. But I understand Wilmer's thinking, because catching San Antonio is not realistic if you're looking at it now from a Copa Teos side. And this is where this happens in MLS, this happens in USL, where the club's main focus isn't Copa Teos, it's more the league and trying to do the best for the league,
which he has said on the record. He has said on the record that to him and his team, Copa Tejas is of little to no importance. His main focus is getting enough points in the season to get back into playoff contention. If it leads to them winning Copa Tejas, fine, right? But
and he's not the only one that says that. Mm-hmm. You have MLS managers saying that, and you have USL managers saying it, and it sucks as supporters because we want that cup to mean a lot, and it does mean a lot. And when they win it, it carries a whole lot more importance. You can't tell me that if Wilmer and RGV gets the win, against San Antonio and wins the Copa Teos Cup, on the 30th here, that he's not going to be, hey, this is what we were going for all along. It'll be, hey, of course this was one of the team goals, but it's not, it's not the number one priority. So I understand the logic, and I understand, hey, playing who you can. The also wild cards in this is El Paso. I think, sorry, seriously, Loco and Phil and Mika, but I think El Paso's in a lot of trouble. So to me, there's one spot that's open between New Mexico and RGV, and if you want to toss Monterey Bay in there, you can. But that's why the rotation to me makes sense, because I think going into the match, a full lineup going against San Antonio's full lineup, I think most thought, hey, if RGV got a draw, that's a good result because it's on the road against the top team. Through their hair, and to me, you guys had the opportunity for it. Just unfortunately, shots didn't fall. Both defenses stepped up. For that here, and the second half really wasn't a whole lot in the second half. For here on either side. I know San Antonio had the offsides goal early, but really it was battle of the midfields, and I think you would have to say it was a draw. But overall, to me, it sets up a hell of a match on the 30th, especially for Copa Tejas. It's I'm assuming Wilmer is going to be putting in his lineup for there because it's one match. Why wouldn't you go for it to bring home silverware for the Stampede? I hope Coach Marcina does the same thing for us, for FTC 210 and the Crocketeers. I hope, hope they're doing it. I know the Copateas leaders, I think Danielle and Steve are planning on going down there because there will be a presentation to somebody. But that's in a couple of weeks here. So overall, I thought it was an interesting match here. I think both teams had some positives. I think both teams walk away with a couple of question marks saying, hey, I wish we could have done better on this. From a fan aspect, just it goes back to the top of the conversation where a Wednesday match, even on ESPN2, it didn't have the same feel. I unfortunately couldn't go because I had to deal. AJ had practice and he didn't want to give up practice, and I can't fault him for that. And Monica had to work, but to me, it just didn't. It didn't have that same excitement. Personally, I would have liked to have seen this earlier in the year for that here. I kind of hate that we're 10 matches, 11 matches left, and we're turning around and playing this in 2 weeks. But that's the schedule.
I'm saying the USL is trying to neuter this rivalry, but before we go and talk about some quotes with our Quema no Quema Ka segment, I do want to ask you, as a San Antonio fan, do you believe that this result was underwhelming given the circumstances? Because obviously for RGV, it was a good result. I was telling the guys, honestly, I think San Antonio, given like all these changes, should have run away with it. But we saw players like Cole Frame, step up. I saw a lot of positives from him. Ian Cerro as well. And they're all a bunch of young guys that are gaining experience. And yes, they're going to be making mistakes, but I mean, they're kids, and a lot of them are coming in from the lower leagues as well. So they're getting some good experience in second division. And the fact that they were able to limit the best offense in the USL Championship to just 2 goals, considering the circumstances, I think it's positive in the eyes of Wilmer and his coaching staff.
I think for San Antonio overall, it's positive as well. When you play RGV, records go out the window. Let's be honest. It's these teams know each other. A lot of us were nervous about going in because we knew the crowd wasn't going to be there, just because of their. We had a dominating performance in New Mexico for that here, and coming back home. Just to me, it was a workman's performance. Where San Antonio did enough. They did what they had to do to get the victory. They had a couple other opportunities that could have went in. They could have gave up some goals as well, to be fair. I think, to me, I think the issue is for San Antonio because Zahir left with probably cramps, but Jome, Ish Jones was a substitute for, I think, in the 60 or no, in the 80th minute due to an injury. Maybe, hopefully, it's just cramp. So for San Antonio FC, you're hoping it's just cramps and stuff like that because it was hot and a little bit humid. But to me, for San Antonio FC, they got the result they needed because this puts them ahead of Sacramento by 1 point in first place in the West. Which is a big deal because Sacramento owns the tiebreaker over San Antonio FC. So for San Antonio FC, they got the 3 points, which is what you want. Especially, I don't think anybody thought they were going to blow RGV out. Now, would we love it? Sure, of course. But if anybody that pays attention to this match knows historically, they're close matches. Historically, teams come back, when they shouldn't come back. Yes. Last year San Antonio, a couple of years before that, RGV. I think it was Michael, RGV, talking about being down 2-0 and a man and came back. So I think both teams, like I said, both teams came out happy. Well, San Antonio came out happy that they got the victory. I'm sure RGV, if you talk to them, and I'm sure come the press release on your the if you guys have
Conference.
a meeting conference conference with the coach, one will be probably like, hey, I think we could have got some points out of this. I think a draw would have been a fair result. So I think maybe RGV was a little bit unlucky along those lines here, just because the two San Antonio goals that they got, especially with Rita's. I think even on both of them, you mentioned that they were something that
Could have
RGV
done better.
could have done better, and if they had the first line back there, maybe they do.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, and this will be the question for you guys. And Ray kind of mentioned this. I was expecting a second summer surge, but oh well. This is the time of year, the last 3 years that RGV's gone on a run and snuck into the playoffs as the 7th, 8th seed or 6th, 7th seed here for that here. The question is, looking at their schedule, can they do it? And do they have the depth to do it? Because that's going to be the key, I think, for this.
Yeah. Mike says, like I told you, Edson, I'm surprised with the results, especially with the lineup. I was like, damn, that's not that bad, but it should have been a draw. Yeah, I agree with you with that. And regards to your question, Harry, the thing is like this year is very different from last year's and the year before. And the fact that in the last 2 years, RGV made some additions to the lineup in the summer months to complement any problems that they were carrying,
any holes,
especially especially on offense. Last year it was like our offense couldn't generate. Will you bring in Jonas Fjellberg, you bring in Christian Pinzon, and they revolutionize your attack, right? And that leads you to the second summer surge that Ray mentions. But now there is nobody. They're not going to bring in anybody. Who do they bring in? They bring in Cody Frame, who's a youngster from lower divisions. You bring in Juan Galindres, because who was a signing that was made in the off season, right? And because of visa issues, he comes in like right in the middle of the season, right? So and then who else have you brought in? You haven't brought in anybody of high caliber that is going to bring in, that's going to jumpstart the offense, jumpstart the midfield, maybe even, bring in fresh ideas to the defense. You don't have anybody. So to me, Wilmer's going to be, working with what he has. And it might not be a spectacular surge, but I do think that the way the season has played out through the Western Conference, it has been benevolent for RGV that they are still only right now 4 points back from playoff positions. And if they play their cards right, and if El Paso Locomotive continues on that free fall, it might just be enough to make it back into the playoff. It's not going to be in a spectacular fashion either, but you also have to remember that RGV did kind of make some improvements earlier in the season, which could be that they don't really need such a spectacular surge to make it into the playoffs. So, but it all goes back to the way ownership wants to spend on this team. And I do think that gives some sort of credit to Wilmer, the fact that despite playing with a lot of lower league or players coming from the lower leagues and not such a high budget, he's able to make this team work on a collective level that are putting all these other higher salary teams like Sacramento, like San Diego, put him in a position in San Antonio, put him in a position where they get decent results. Like against San Antonio, San Diego, you got to win over there. Against Sacramento, you got to draw, at their field. San Antonio with a rotated squad, you're able to limit them. Yes, you lost, but you were able to do a little bit of damage control, kind of thing. So that gives some credit, at least in my eyes, to Wilmer and how he works with these young players, which is why it's also very surprising how he didn't do the same thing with the Houston Dynamo. He never called up players from RGV, never called up players from the academy. He always worked with these players that were from MLS or from international players. But that's a topic for another podcast.
So here's a question for you for GM Edson. If you could bring in one player, or not one player, one position. So one player for a position, what position would GM Edson bring in? Let's say it's a loanee from an MLS team, whether for that here. But what position do you think that GM Ochoa would be looking to bring? I know Ray mentioned defense.
Honestly, man, I would try to bring in a replacement for Cristiano Francois. Honestly, I still, despite his assist yesterday, I'm still not convinced on him as a player overall. And Christian Pinzon is going through issues, coming back from a major injury. He doesn't look 100% confident in his ankle. That's why you haven't seen the magic that we saw from him last season as well. Or like I told Harry as well, that could also be because he can't gel with these players as much as he did with Jonas Fjellberg last season, which is why we saw a lot of the magic at the end of the at that summer search. But for me, I do think that it's a higher priority to try to get some more goals, try to feed some more balls to Juan Galindez, So I would go with that, but I think close second would actually be more, better defenders. Maybe not necessarily Jonathan Ricketts, but I guess maybe bring in somebody that is going to be a better fit than Gabriel Benitez as an outside back. My dad says he would bring back Robert Castellanos. I would actually not be against that at all. But I do understand that, I think it's best for him to kind of stay at an MLS level. I think he's got a lot of room to grow as a player if he stays in MLS. And I think he's showing good promise. Hopefully he gets more opportunities at the MLS level with Sporting Kansas City. Abraham Moreno says Francois with the face palm. And Mike says, good question, Harry, but for sure from the offense. So I think overall there's a consensus between a center back and, of course, some offense. But let's go on real quick because we're nearing an hour and a half of a show. But let's go on real quick to my favorite segment, which is Quema no Quema Ka. So just a quick explanation, Harry. Quema no Quema Ka. Our version of spot on, spot off. If you guys hear door bumper clear, NASCAR podcast. But basically, quema means you agree with the quote or the news or something current event regarding to the USL. No quema means you disagree. So the first one is a quote, a pregame quote from Wilmer, which he says, and this is regarding on the keys to getting a win at San Antonio. He said, if you remember very well, we scored a third goal, and we're just talking about the last game we played at Toyota Field. We scored a third goal, and the referee disallowed us the goal. It was 3-0 in reality, but it was disallowed. We don't know yet why. It's a fact that the referees also play a big role in this situation, and over there, it happens that the pressure that the referees feel in that market makes some kind of effect. But we have to live with that. We're not going to try to make any excuses, and the team that is going to put the ball in the back of the net more is going to win.
So I agree with the thought. I disagree with the why it was disallowed. I don't remember the exact thing, but I do agree. And this isn't just San Antonio FC. You see it in Tampa, you see it in Sacramento, you see it in San Diego, Phoenix as an example. Referees do face pressure with the crowds, and we talked about this at the start, where with this crowd was a little bit more soft, I guess you could kind of say, quiet, whatever the termination. But yeah, no, I do agree with that. But we have also seen some calls that have gone against San Antonio as well. But I do think referees play a part of this match. They always have, they always will. And it just depends on if you're wearing orange or black on whether the call is right or wrong, especially on those 50-50 calls. But yeah, I do believe, as far as for his message, I do think that you got to live with it. And as he mentioned, the team that puts the ball in the back of the net is going to win. And but yeah, I agree with that. I disagree, with him saying, "Hey, he was up 3-0 in reality," but
I mean, if it was reality, then it would have been a 3-0 and not a 2-0 disallowed. Like, let's be honest. If you want to use it, it's kind of like when people say literally, but they mean it. They mean figuratively. This is kind of what's going on here. Like, no,
I don't want to offend you, but
yeah, kind of thing. It's like, okay, 3-0 in reality. No, it's not reality because the goal was disallowed. So the reality was 2-0, and the team bottled it, and you end up having to get a 2-2 draw kind of thing. So. But I mean, I get the sentiment, but man, like the question was asked. Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, because he was there at the press conference. That's a sucky thing. It was early in the game, early in the day, and that's when I work, so I can't get on those pressers anyway. But if I recall correctly, that the question was, "What are the keys to win at San Antonio?" Why are you bringing up the referees from the last game? That's what I don't get. And he didn't answer the question. That's where I disagree with what Wilmer's talking about. I was like, you got to ask the question about what are the keys to the game to win against San Antonio. And you start talking about referees and then you say, after you start complaining about that the referees called it bad against you, it's like, but it's not, but we shouldn't be making excuses. You just did. Like, I love you, Wilmer, but man, it's like if you could sometimes you could just answer the question, that would be great, kind of thing. Because then you make up these quotes, and I have no choice but to put it in freaking Kema no Kema cut, just to have a little bit of a banter over it. Nothing against you, Wilmer, but I just thought that was funny. Let's see. Mike says, if I was Cantu, I will trade both his stadiums for Messi. So I think he's talking about Bird Ogden Arena and HEB Park for Lionel Messi.
Still not enough, man.
No, not at all. Guys, come on, chat. What do you guys think?
I'm not an MLS fan, but I'll admit this Leagues Cup has been extremely entertaining. Messi, Messi's Messi. He's the GOAT for a reason. I don't necessarily say it's all poor defensive in the MLS, but like I said, he's the GOAT. There's a reason why he's doing what he's doing.
This is maybe one of his hospitals too. I think he's gonna have to sell all of the Rio Grande Valley just just to get. So Ray says Schema, so he agrees with Wilmer. Abraham, the question was, do you agree with what Wilmer said about the referees and the team put in the ball in the back of the net is going to win? That was pretty much the question. Do you agree with that statement or not? So but I think he's got a point. What was the question? Because he didn't answer the question. But anyway, moving on to the next one and the last one, this is also from Wilmer Cabrera. This is also a pregame quote, but this is going to be fun for you, Harry. Wilmer Cabrera on trying to stop a streak where the Toros haven't been able to beat San Antonio in 7 matches at that time. It's just numbers that have to be broken at some point. If we have to face the games based on what we've done before, then we shouldn't be playing because some statistics are good and some statistics are bad. The good thing is we have a new chance. On the other hand, we haven't lost against San Antonio in San Antonio during the regular season. It is a new game, a new day. We have to face them, and we have the motivation to try to do well over there.
Honestly, I don't like that. Because we have to face them and have the motivation to try to do well over there. I don't like the end of that sentence.
Why is that?
Because it almost sounds like you're kind of giving up. Like you don't have confidence that you're going to go in and get the 3 points.
That should have been a red flag, of what kind of lineup he was going for, huh?
Because
You
he's
know,
not wrong. At some point, RGV is going to break this streak. I
mhm.
hope it's not the next one, but the odds are in this series because it used to be. For those that don't know, RGV was the one that originally had the big lead in the series.
Yes,
And then it was 50-50 pretty much, where, they would split, San Antonio might win 2 and lose 1, but they were close matches. I think since what 2020, I'd have to pull it up
yeah,
here,
I think so. I
is
think it
when
was 2020.
is where San Antonio's kind of put the foot down under Coach Marcina. And to be fair, and I think RGV fans would even agree to this, San Antonio raised the level on the pitch
Yes,
from Coach Powell. The players that they had, which was younger, more academy driven. Because if you now notice, San Antonio doesn't talk about their academy anymore. It's
correct.
all about bringing in fringe MLS players and that
They're in it
either
to win
on
the
loan.
cup. They're in it to win the cup.
Yes, win the cup. So they're not playing youngsters right now. So I think that is why you're seeing this huge difference from before. And we just talked about it with GM Ochoa here, of RGV at this time doesn't have the balance or the budget um, to balance, but they are going to win. I just hope it's not this next one because to answer Mike's question here, did SAFC win the Copa Teos yesterday? No. The If RGV wins
The 30th.
on the 30th, they win the cup. It's that simple. If San Antonio ties or wins, they win the cup. So it's for RGV. They control it. They control their own destiny. You could be listening to you could be listening. You could be lifting the cup if you guys eke out a victory for them and break the streak. So that's why, to me, the longer this goes, the at some point, just because it is a close rivalry, at some point RGV is going to, to get it. Just mathematically, it's going to happen.
And it's like they say, the more a streak continues, the closer it is to get broken.
Correct.
You know, that's
But
one of the things that I mentioned to Shadow in the pregame Twitter space. It's one of the things I told him was that I conceded in that aspect because yeah, it is. The South Texas Derby historically has always been tight matches, right? And
and
Mike
even
says,
this match was tight. Even
yeah.
this match was tight.
And then Mike says, like you said earlier, Harry, them 25-day contracts help you guys in the long run.
Yeah, and that's the thing that doesn't, and especially for RGV, where let's say you have these 3 games in 8 days.
Mhm.
Bring in some of these guys that even if they're lower league, they can help with that player rotation to where you got the confidence to be able to do it, where you can rotate rotate players, and that way you're not having to do a hockey line switch of 8 players off and 8 players on.
Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe you substitute 2 or 3 in Louisville, and then you substitute 2 or 3 like San Antonio did against RGV. And the 25-day contracts, you find out, hey, do they mesh with the team? More importantly, do they mesh with Wilmer's coaching style? Because like Marcina, he has a unique coaching style that not everybody can adapt to. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly. So before we end this show, I do want to have Harry, since he knows more about the rest of the USL. He does pay more attention to the games, considering the fact he's wearing a Bandidos shirt right now. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago that Phoenix Rising is on the up and up right now, despite being low in the standards of what they're used to historically. what do you expect? What do you expect, or how have they been playing? How can you describe, their play style under the new coach, and what makes them dangerous? Despite not having players like what's his
Trejo.
Solomon Asan, yeah.
Yeah, so Trejo and then Manuel Ortega is their, Trejo's got 12 goals, Ortega's got 11. They brought Formello in from Oakland Roots. Carlos Harvey, he's not he's not very popular in San Antonio, but he's one of those defenders, midfielders that plays on the edge a little bit.
Hmm.
But his passing skills, you got to give him. He's MLS quality. They brought in Pangias Armikas from Loudoun United. So offensively, I know the beginning of the year they kind of struggled offensively. They did that. Now defensively, they just lost Kevon Lambert, their top center back, to who went to Real Salt Lake. So defensively, they'll leak goals, but just the speed on the outside with Trejo and Ortega, and then with Harvey, they're going to be tough. Now, I've spoke with them quite a bit. Um, just they historically don't do well in, if my memory serves me correct, in RGV. They've always kind of struggled through there. So you guys beat them last year 2-1. You guys beat them in the playoffs. I'm trying to see here. It's canceled. So their last one was, yeah. So they drew quite a bit beforehand because RGV's where dreams go to die, as everybody knows.
Hmm.
Um, but to me, like I said here, if RGV can play their way and play defensively, and especially where they're hopefully going to be a little bit more rested for it with the full lineup, it'll be a hell of a match. Like I said here, the Heat, they're the one team that's probably used to the heat, but not necessarily the humidity aspect of it. And I think that's where RGV might have a little bit of a advantage, but it'll be tough for RGV. I just think offensively with Trejo, like I said here, I think he's a player that we all remember. Um when he was with Vegas, he's played with LAFC. He's a special kid that's got speed, and if he's one on one against you, watch out. But you guys shut down Tanny. Was the Golden Boot leader of USL.
Yeah.
Tanny didn't really have a whole lot. You guys shut him down with your second line. So, but it'll be
and
interesting
we
because our
and also we were able to limit Colorado Springs, who also has a lot of speedy wingers. And one of the things that they talked about is they were able to the defense was able to adapt to not give them enough space to run, because they knew that if they did that, that would be pretty much like shooting yourself in the foot, right? So there is hope that at least defensively, if they're 100% focused, that this team has what it takes to limit the speed and up front for Phoenix Rising. Going back what you were saying, at results between Phoenix Rising and RGV at HEB Park, so it's pretty much equal. I mean, in 2022 we beat them 2-1, and then in 2019 they beat us 1-0, and then the rest of the three matches before that at HEB Park have been draws: 0-0, 1-1, and 1-1 in 2016 and 2017 when they were called Arizona United.
right. But I look at, because there's two versions of RGV. There's the Dynamo version, and then there's the independent version, where independent version has been a lot more successful at. Well, I guess there hasn't been a lot of opportunities, but you guys beat them in the playoffs on penalty kicks, and then like I said, you beat them in RGV. for that 2-1. And let me see here, was it a late goal, 39-48, and yeah, Jonas with the goal assist from Juan Torres in the 55th minute
Mhm.
for that here. So it it'll be tough, but like I said here, it's I don't know if I would predict RGV to win, but as I said earlier, I
So what's
think
your
it's
prediction?
you're gonna do that. I'm gonna I'm gonna go a 1-1 draw. Just because I just don't know if you guys have enough offense to be able to get the win. I think defensively, you guys will hold them down. But do I think you guys got enough offensively? And it's not necessarily shots, but it's getting shots on frame because
I mean, they've gotten better. I
you
think to
guys
me,
struggle like San Antonio.
yeah, I think to me, with our regular lineup, with Taylor Davila, with Wilmer Jr., with obviously a Juan Galindres, with Cabezas in the lineup, with the backline of Aqua, Pimentel, Ricketts on there. I think we may have what it takes to get a 2-1 win. I think my regular prediction is a 2-1 win. And let me tell you why. Because RGV's offense have done a better job in getting shots on target, not just shots in general. One of the biggest key things about RGV is that they have been decent with shots from outside the box, especially from Taylor Davila, right? So in case for some reason uh Phoenix Rising is able to lock down the wings, we've got another point of attack right there through the long shots. And you just mentioned before that Phoenix Rising tends to be a leaky defense this season, and despite that, they still have a positive 8 goal difference.
Well,
So
here's the reason. Here's the reason why, and this is another favor. So, and San Antonio fell victim to this. Remember, they beat Charleston 7-0.
yes,
The next week, they went to Detroit and lost 1-0. Phoenix Rising beat Memphis on July 1st 6-0. Went to Miami, lost 2-1. They just beat El Paso 5-0. So if you're looking at those big wins, typically that next match, at least this year historically, we've seen teams kind of struggle. So there's, it wouldn't shock me if RGV won, just because RGV historic. This is the time of year where RGV makes a run. We talked about this before.
mm-hmm. So Ray says 2-1 win for RGV. Mike says also 2-1 last minute goal RGV. Abraham also says 2-1 RGV. So it looks like Toros Nation is a little bit what's the word I'm looking for?
Consistent.
Yeah, they're consistent, and they've got hope that we can get a positive result. So Harry, what is your bold prediction for this match?
4-0 Rising. Or pardon me, 4-0 RGV.
4-0 RGV.
With a hat trick by was it Ian? What was his last name?
Cerro.
Cerro. Yeah, I really liked him. He was like, I'll probably have to learn a little bit more about his story, but like I said here, I could see he looked like a young player that could develop. And it'll be interesting. And I know we say this every year. Can RGV keep young players like that from year to year?
Yeah,
that's a discussion down the road.
I think for me, I think my bold prediction is going to be and the catastrophic loss for RGV. 4-0. 4-0 loss would be my bold prediction. And the reason I say it is because, man, it's like the last couple of games, they've been making some really dumb mistakes in the back line against Las Vegas. Again, that they haven't been able to kind of clear out of their system just yet. They had gotten good clean sheets, and all of a sudden, like in that game against Las Vegas, where Aqua just kind of like heads it like straight to, I think it was Andrew Carlton, if I'm not mistaken. So those kind of mistakes is like you got to limit those. And obviously with Phoenix is one of those teams where they smell blood in the water and they're going to attack you. and make you pay for it. So I think, I think for me, bold prediction 4-0 loss.
I have another bold prediction. I do think RGV makes at least I'll say 2 player movements in this year. I do think where they're this close, I do think that they will try to bring in some player movements. Now, will they be top tier quality? Probably not, but I do think that they will bring in player movements, 2 player movements that you don't think that they will.
So Mike says bold prediction 3-0 RGV pin zone comeback. Abraham says bold prediction 3-3. Ray says 3-3 bold prediction, and there's a tragedia at the end, which means that RGV is winning 3-2, and in the last second, tragedy happens, and Phoenix gets the equalizer. And then Michael regarding Ian Cerro says that's bold, but let's go Ian. So I think he's talking about you mentioning he was going to get a Hattie, but Harry, but that's going to be it for this episode, guys. Thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for talking with us about the Toros. It's always great to have the community back to talking and discussing about RGV, learning more. Obviously, it's obviously great when we have when it's South Texas Derby week, when the before or after. Harry comes on, gives his points, gets his point of view into the discussion. Harry, I never say it enough, man. You're a great asset for the USL Championship to have as a podcaster and as a fan in general, right? So it's always great to have you here on the show. Even if it's for banter, but but also the analytical side of it as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And like I said here, Michael saying, let's go Jets, or go Jets, go. That's something that you don't ever see from Michael very often, but I guess, he's going to be out there in a wheelchair trying to throw the ball. The Jets will be interesting to see, with Davin Cook for that here. Abraham, yeah, San Antonio fans, generally speaking, are very welcoming. They're just like in RGV. I've never had any issues now. I have heard a couple exceptions that go both ways, and concessions are weird. Yes, our concessions I do not think are as good as RGV's or El Paso's or New Mexico's, but there's a lot of things SAFC does well on the field. SAFC does well with the contract wise player movement in and out, but concessions, merchandise, it's.
I do have a bone to pick with freaking Toyota Field management. Oh, no. I still think it's so stupid that they don't allow visiting fans to bring in scarves, to bring in flags, or anything of the matter.
What do you mean? Oh, no scarves?
That's what I was told yesterday. Abraham, that's what he told me. They didn't allow flags into the stadium.
I've seen them bring flags in.
Yeah, that's what Abraham just told me right
now. I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. So, because I get hassled with bringing my flag in.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer. You just.
Yeah. No, I get. He said they didn't allow me to take flags or noisemakers into the stadium.
Noisemaker, yes. Flags, I don't. Like if it's a flag that can fold up and put in your bag, I don't think that they have issue with it. If it's a flag that goes up against the wall, for that here, but yeah, the Mexican food options, yeah, no, it's.
But Harry, before we go, let our fans know, like, where can they find you? What do you like? I know you do a lot of podcasts and shows. Where can they find your stuff?
So you can follow me at Ramincol at RAMINCOL. We broke up. Well, not broke up. We split SAFC Fancast. That'll be coming back probably either this week or next week for sure. We took a break just because there was some stuff that was going on that we had to take care of. But that should be coming back either later on this week or next week. And then SA Soccer Roundtable, we've kind of going to give that more dedicated to high schools and other non SAFC, so that way there's clear distinction between the two for that, because we asked our the fan base, and they do like having the split shows, so that way high schoolers can listen to just the high school, and if you're a SAFC fan, you can listen to the other stuff. So that'll be coming on. But yeah, main way to reach me is at Ram and Call on Twitter or X. I think we're still doing that, although I have a couple others as in case that does continue to go down the drain. But it's hard for me to give that up just because of the platform and the friends and stuff that we, you probably have the same thing where I would like a good alternative, but unfortunately there's just not one that's comparable at this time. So
yeah, I opened up a Threads account. I haven't used it ever since.
I have a Threads account, and I think I have one post on there maybe for here. I have an Instagram account, but I'm old and I don't understand. Well, I don't say I don't understand, but I'm like pictures and videos through there. TikTok, I do TikTok for non-soccer, stuff. Which is what my TikTok is mainly for. But no, it's like I said through there. Obviously, I try to promote down in the valley as much as I can. Obviously, and if you ever need anything while you're in San Antonio, reach out for me. Edson has my number, and it's been fun. I hope I filled Jacob's shoes pretty well. Probably a little bit more positive about San Antonio than he is, but
yeah,
we won't say he's a closet San Antonio fan because he's not.
Yeah. No, fortunately he had to work today, so he wasn't able to join us. But it's great that you were able to come on the show. It's always great to talk to you about San Antonio versus RGV and all of that, both on and off the air. I know you were also with Shadow with the El Gringo pod earlier this week. So you have been very very active when it comes to the South Texas Derby. But guys, that's gonna be it for today. You can, like I said, you can always find me at Ochoa_8 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on Threads. Obviously, you can also follow the Down in the Valley account at Down in the RGV, Twitter, Facebook, and on Instagram. I haven't even made a Threads. I don't even think it's worth it at this point to make a.
I don't think you can. You can't, because you can only have one. That's the other thing. You can only have one Threads account per. Hello.
Hi, Mishi.
Hey, Mr. Snuggles making a
Jack, where are you? Come here. Nah, he's probably chilling with the Grim. But yeah, be sure to follow our accounts where we talk about obviously the Toros and all of that. I know I've been kind of off and on. Unfortunately, that's personal life issues, kind of work and all of that, but I try to do my best. And also, like I've started to say before, be sure to go out and support other Toros fans, content creators. Obviously, support Ray at South Texas Border Sports. Support Jacob with the Overreacted Gamer. Not really Toros related, but it is gaming. He is our co-host as well. So be sure to support him. Support, like I said, Shadow Wolf with the El Gringo Pod. Of course, Costless Titan is another content creator for talks about RGV FC. He's also a fan of the show, so be sure to help him out. Like their stuff, share their stuff, comment on their stuff. That way, the YouTube algorithm is a little bit more benevolent to help them, help spread their content over to the Toros fan base.
And support the Stampede too. Support the supporters groups because they do a lot on game day, both pre and during the match, and then obviously during the community. Like I said here, I know the Stampede does a lot, a few events community wise as well. So
yeah,
support your local team both on and off the pitch if you can.
Exactly. But guys, that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will hopefully see each other next week in another episode of the Down in the Valley podcast. Have a good night.
Peace.